Do the dead know that they are dead? It completely depends. So on the state of mind right before death, and also attachment. So if someone, because the soul cannot be confined, of course. So what can be left behind, what is left behind, is the ego and the spirit. Now the ego can dissipate if somebody is unattached, but if it isn't, if they are still attached very much to the senses and to this world, and they're so attached that they just cannot leave any of it behind. They cannot be somewhere else even for a second. They're extremely attached. The ghost can remain, which is the ego. Now, that sometimes it knows it's in that state, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's still seeking those things that it's attached to without the ability to get them. It's a hellish state of existence because it doesn't know why it can't get them, why it can't experience life, because it feels like it still has a body, but it doesn't. So you might ask yourself, how could it not know it doesn't have a body anymore? So a ghost or a spirit, but we'll get to the spirits, it doesn't have the full thinking capacity of a human being that is alive. You can think of a ghost kind of having the thinking capacity of somebody who's in a nursing home and who has very wispy thoughts, cannot focus. Some ghosts that are extremely bad, which are very rare, are just filled with complete rage and they can't be anything else. Some are filled with complete sadness, which is also really rare. Sometimes it's just that emotion that they're filled with, and that's the only thing that they are. That's the only thing that remains of that person, because that emotion is so strong. That can become a ghost. That can remain. So when we're talking about the wispy ghosts, the ones that can't focus, kind of has a conscience of somebody in a nursing home, but more so because those people are still alive. There's not a train of thought that it continues. There's not a train of thought that it can keep going with. Just think of yourself as when you're going to sleep and you kind of have thoughts that pop up every now and then, or when you're listening to a song and it kind of takes you away to memories. Ghosts are usually always like that. Every now and then they might have a little bit of self-awareness and be a little bit shocked, chagrined at their situation, but usually it's the vast majority of the time that what's left of that consciousness, it's just very wispy. So usually this is a very good thing if there's a ghost that remains, because that means that it's not going to remain for that long on the grander scale of things. It might remain for a year, some extreme cases maybe 100 years or more. The ghosts that are very emotional, that were so filled with this one emotion during life, like rage or sadness. Usually the happiness isn't the ones that stick around. They might stick around for a little bit to protect their family members, but those ones that are very emotional, those are the ones that stick around longer and that can cause us problems. But they're extremely rare, far rarer than people think. So going on to spirits. So spirits, it's more the life force. It's not the ego. The life force of that person that associated with the body. Now, the life force associated with the body, the reason why it's a separate thing, the life force, is because we get the life force from the earth and then we give it back. So, since we give it back, sometimes the spirit of the life force becomes very associated with that birth that it's in. Sometimes there's something within somebody's, spiritual makeup, that soul makeup's more what they embraced during life and the kind of person that they were. Sometimes that is so extreme that it ties a piece of that person to the life force, and the life force sticks around. It's more primordial, more animalistic, if you will, more primal than a ghost. It's more it's more like animal and nature based. It's more drives than thoughts per se. It's more and it's not necessarily emotional drives. It's more like staying alive drives, or protecting land drives, or being one with the land drives. Now those drives, if it's one, the spirit of this life force wants to go back into the earth. So usually the spirit won't stick around for that long, either. In rare cases they do. But that the awareness for a spirit, and now there's different kinds of spirits. When you're talking about Vodou Loa, those are much macro spirits, but I'm just talking about spirits of an average person. So the spirits, if it does stick around, and it does get associated with that person in some way, and it does stick around in an area for some reason, only in the cases where a person has very strong attachments to both who they were and who that person was in that place, that life force might want to stick around in its form for a while before going back into the earth. That can happen. And the soul itself. So the soul itself is more what goes on to different dimensions, or before it gets reborn, or it goes into different dimensions. So all lower dimensions are temporary. All higher dimensions you can go to, your soul can just go to, and just keep on going into higher and higher dimensions. But usually, the vast majority of the time, because there's still a lot of unliberated souls, the vast majority of the time you go to a different afterlife place for a time, and then you return, here. So the thing that goes to a different afterlife, the soul has its mostly full faculties. Unless it's like a hellish realm for a time, it might be more primal or more fear-based. But the soul the person that goes to an afterlife, they're still feeling that they're that person, but they also can remember their other lives, who they were in other lives. And then when they're reborn, that's when that person that they were truly becomes somebody else, because afterlives are either enjoyed or not enjoyed by the person that was living in the life before. So those souls, even a lot of the ones in the hellish realms, they know that they're dead, or they're somewhere else. The other things that are left behind, maybe not all the time. So do the dead know that they are dead? I would say it depends. There's no clear-cut answer, but I hope that I explained enough in this to where you have a general idea of what I'm talking about. And these are just my thoughts and my beliefs and my realizations. I like to think you can have your own beliefs. That's more than fine. I could be wrong about all of it, but based on working with the dead, feeling them, communicating with them, this is a lot of what I've gleaned. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that y'all enjoyed this, and all of you have a wonderful day.